During World War II, the American people were called upon to make sacrifices in order to support their troops overseas. They were asked to change jobs, take on new responsibilities at home, and even alter their diets. The military received the best food available while everyone else had to tighten their belts and find ways to make do with what was left. However, instead of grumbling about their situation, the American people got creative. They used their ingenuity to come up with new and innovative ways to feed their families. They learned to make do with less, and they made sure that every scrap of food was used to its fullest potential. Today, we're going to take a closer look at what people ate during this challenging time in their history. We'll explore the recipes they used to stretch their limited resources, and we'll learn how they made every meal count. Despite the difficulties they faced, people found a way to persevere, and their resourcefulness is an inspiration to us all. As World War II ramped up, the United States government quickly realized that the military would be in competition with the general population for resources such as food, metal, rubber, paper, and various other materials. In order to ensure that the armed forces had what they needed to win the war, a system of rationing was put into place. Here's how it worked. The government gave every citizen, both adults and children, a certain number of points. These points had to be spent, along with money, on any item restricted for use in the war effort. For example, in 1943, a pound of bacon cost 7 points, in addition to its monetary price of about $0.30. The points were distributed in books in the form of stamps by the Office of Price Administration, OPA, which had volunteers distribute the books and explain their purpose to merchants and consumers alike. The first products to be rationed were tires, followed by automobiles and gasoline. Then, in May 1942, the government began putting food products, including sugar and coffee, on the list. A few months later, meat, fish, canned milk, fats, and cheeses were also deemed restricted. Anytime a new item was added to the list, hoarders would clean the stores out, leading to shortages. Inevitably, many of the restricted goods would be traded on the black market. Despite these problems, however, the system functioned well enough. Similar restrictions were also imposed in the homelands of America's European allies. With so many basic staples being rationed, the public was forced to get creative with cooking and find ways to make do with what was available. Sponge cake, a simple yet delightful dessert, has been enjoyed since the Renaissance era. Its enduring popularity is thanks to its delicious taste and ease of preparation. However, during World War II, the ingredients needed to make this treat, such as flour, sugar, butter, and eggs, were in high demand by soldiers. Eggs and sugar, in particular, were scarce commodities in grocery stores around the world. This presented a challenge for those who wanted to enjoy sponge cake during the war. In Wales, a version of the cake had to be made without eggs, but with a lot of margarine, syrup, and milk. Jam was usually spread between the two layers of the cake. While this version of the sponge cake may not have been as fluffy as modern diners are used to, it still had a golden hue if cooked properly. Despite the scarcity of ingredients, people during World War II found ways to adapt and make do with what was available, creating new recipes and variations of old favorites. The ingenuity and creativity displayed during this time were a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. World War II had a devastating impact on Poland, with a staggering 25% of the population lost in the fighting. German forces seized Polish land, leaving the remaining population with limited access to ingredients. Despite these challenges, the Polish people found ways to make the most of what they had. One dish that brought joy to Polish children was blueberry dumplings, served with potato flour sour cream. This sour cream was made from milk, sugar, and potato flour, which is similar to a standard recipe for whipped cream. Maria Karpowicowa, who grew up outside of Warsaw, collected recipes from this time period, including the recipe for the potato flour sour cream. According to her, the kids indulge themselves because they can cover the dumplings with a copious amount of the cream. Even in the midst of war and hardship, people found ways to enjoy simple pleasures like a sweet treat shared with loved ones. The resilience and creativity of the Polish people during this time are a testament to the strength of the human spirit. In England during World War II, cooks faced the difficult task of maintaining a sense of normalcy in their meals, despite food shortages and rationing. One inventive solution they came up with was to create mock fish fillets using rice. To make these fillets, cooks mixed rice and egg together and formed them into half-inch thick patties. The patties were then fried and chilled before being cut into fillet-shaped pieces. If bread was available, the fillets were breaded before being fried again to achieve a golden color and crispy texture. The high demand for meat during World War II created a challenge for those on the home front. The military received the majority of the meat, leaving the general population with limited options. Restaurants were quick to adapt, creating meatless menus on certain days of the week. Advertisers began sharing meatless recipes, including creamed eggs over pancakes and walnut cheese patties. Home cooks also got creative, finding new ways to stretch their ingredients. Some even created new recipes altogether. One such recipe was a variation on a classic meatloaf. Instead of ground beef, the loaf was made with a cup of peas, a cup of mashed potatoes, and a can of condensed tomato soup. While it didn't quite compare to the real thing, it was an efficient way to incorporate vegetables and use up leftovers. Leftovers were a key component of rationing during World War II, as people had to make their food supplies last as long as possible. This led to many meals being created from odds and ends. One such meal was bubble and squeak, which wasn't a specific recipe, but rather a dish made from whatever ingredients were available. The one constant ingredient in bubble and squeak was mashed potatoes, which remained widely available during rationing because they were easy to grow. What made mashed potatoes so versatile was their ability to absorb different flavors. In bubble and squeak, mashed potatoes were used to make a kind of potato pancake, which was typically filled with whatever meat and vegetables were on hand. In occupied Poland during World War II, flour was a scarce commodity, and bakers had to come up with creative ways to make desserts. One solution was to use beans instead of flour. Although beans have a different taste and texture than flour, they can be boiled and mashed to create a pliable dough that can be sweetened and used in baking. Despite its earthy flavor, Polish chefs found a way to make the bean-based cake more palatable by adding 6 tablespoons of sugar to the recipe. The result was likely a tasty and unique dessert that helped them cope with the challenges of wartime rationing. During World War II, fresh fruits and vegetables were abundant in America, thanks to the fact that they could not be sent overseas to soldiers. As a result, the government encouraged Americans to eat more of them, and even to start their own victory gardens to grow and produce their own produce. Onions, in particular, were a popular vegetable because they were easy to grow and very hardy. And during the 1940s, creative cooks began stuffing them with all sorts of ingredients. One surprising ingredient that made its way into stuffed onions was grape nuts, a cereal that is famously bland and crunchy. Despite its lack of flavor, grape nuts was a staple in American kitchens at the time, and one surprising ingredient that made its way into stuffed onions was grape nuts, a cereal that is famously bland and crunchy. Despite its lack of flavor, grape nuts was a staple in American kitchens at the time, and it turned out to be the perfect addition to stuffed onions. So what do you think? Which dish would you like to try? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, subscribe to Time Capsule and don't forget to hit the bell icon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in our next video.